Hello, everybody. Welcome along. My name is Benjamin Bloom. This is the Benjamin Bloom Football Channel. Please leave your bias at the door and join me to discuss Derby's survival, how they did it. Oof. Complete transparency. It's 3:35 on the final day of the season. And I've just watched the events unfold around Derby's survival. So if my voice is a little bit hoarse and my energy levels are low, well, you can watch back bits of the Super Stream. We'll clip some of them up. But an incredible final day of the season sees Derby staying up by the skin of their teeth by 1 point. Let's talk about the whole story and essentially how they found themselves in this position in the first place and how they did indeed get out of it. Got to look at the lead up first of all. And if you look at the figures at the top, that's those previous championship seasons. Remember, 7 years ago there, 13-14, Steve McLaren, third place, losing in the playoffs. That was the time, wasn't it? A good Derby side, Zamora in the playoffs, and should have gone up that season and didn't. And then 8th, 5th, and losing in the playoffs in 15-16. I think Darren Walsall was sort of caretaker manager in the playoffs then. 9th, and then 2 more playoff seasons, one under Gary Rowett, one under Frank Lampard. And they both, again, get in the playoffs. Rowett loses in the semi to Fulham. Lampard gets to the final with that incredible win over Leeds. And what you see is at that point when Lampard loses the playoff final is a bit of a change in direction from Mel Morris, who had always gone against the big boys, those parachute teams, and tried to spend on a similar level. And there was a real sense that when Philippe Cocu came in after that lots of players coming in for lots of money each season was not going to be the methodology anymore. Cocu took Derby to 10th position last season. You can see there the makeup of the team, and you can see that Ben Hamer, well, he was on loan, wasn't he? Both the fullbacks are going to be sold. An ageing Curtis Davis. And the rest of those players still around, other than Chris Martin, who Derby allowed his contract to run down. He ends up at Bristol City, and I think most of us thought at the time, okay, off goes Chris Martin to Bristol City, and Derby will replace him and bring someone in up top. And, well, I think everybody watching this knows that they didn't, and we'll talk about that later. Here is the summer transfer business for Derby. Already mentioned a couple of deals. I will just quickly say, because I have put out videos already as it pertains to Sheffield Wednesday and Rotherham and Wycombe being relegated, Derby surviving, that I will mention that Derby were charged with an FFP infraction, found not guilty on August the 25th this season. And a lot of people seem to be bringing it up today that Sheffield Wednesday, who were found guilty, had a points deduction, and Derby, who were found not guilty, didn't have a points deduction. It seems to be coming up a lot. I'm not going to talk about it because there's nothing to talk about if they weren't found guilty. And I did a video on it at the time. You can check back August the 25th, and it seems to be coming up a lot. So if you want to mention that in the comments, feel free. Let's have a sensible, reasoned question. If you think they should have been found guilty, then let us all know why. But being as they weren't, and we all move on, that's as much of a mention it as I'm gonna give it. We mentioned Lowe and Bogle being sold. Martin, Malone out on loan. Mitchell, Bennett goes to Millwall. Josephson out on loan. Marriott out on loan. Anya, Ravas, loads of people out. And when we get to the end of the season, particularly with Jack Marriott, Chris Martin, Scott Malone, you start to think, well, particularly with Malone, for example, I don't know whether he's on high wages or what have you, played the whole season at Millwall. And the two strikers, Marriott and Martin, who went out of the club, Maybe, again, there's financial reasons why those players weren't deemed necessary this season, but haven't had a striker virtually all season. There you go. In comes Kamil Josviak, transfer marked, report in 3.87 million. Expensive, as always. If you disagree with any transfer fees, write transfer marked. A strongly worded letter. Don't clutter the comments up with hearsay about transfer fees. To Veric, bust. Ibe, bust. Edem, youngster. Clark, decent signing in on loan. And then a couple of players in from Wigan, Marshall and Burn. They're both decent signings, to be fair, especially Burn. Kazim Richards, that was the extent of Derby's front line, wasn't it? An ageing Colin Kazim Richards. No disrespect to the player, who's performed really well, actually, especially given he's a 34-year-old free transfer that couldn't get a club anywhere else. But very, very poor. A club of sort of Derby status allowing the striking positions to just completely empty out, with players leaving on loans and free transfers and not having anybody else there. So that were the ins and the outs. And we're going to get some off-pitch chaos a lot of the season, really. That 5th of November, that is, EFL approve Derby County's takeover by Sheikh Khaled bin Zayed Al Nahyan. Excuse me if I've butchered that name. Anyone familiar with that dialect? Apologies. However, that's John Percy, who's very good on Derby in the Telegraph. Barring any late hitches, deals should be made a formality this month. And this goes back to Mel Morris, even as far as 2019. I remember quotes, he'd sell it for £1 now if someone would take it on and run it properly. So there's always been this thing sort of over the top of Derby that, I mean, that's even during the Lampard time and Wilson and Mount and Tamori loaned in and playoff final defeat, that Morris has wanted out for a long time, and a bit of a sense that he was pulling back, pulling back the ambition, pulling back the investment as we were going. And, you want an owner who's in and invested, and believe me, Morris had been up until recent seasons, but he wanted out, and this is now going to rumble all season long and not help Derby in any way, shape, form or fashion. The end for Koku. So look, Koku is going to get sacked on the 14th of November. Steve McLaren is then going to come in as a technical director 10 days later. And you can see Wayne Rooney there on the right-hand side. He and Liam Rosenia are running it from the moment Koku goes out as caretakers. And then just for your timeline, Rooney, it's the middle of January. 15th of January possibly rings a bell. Anyway, middle of January, give or take a few days. Rooney then becomes the full-time guy. So Derby, yet again, sacking a manager. I mean, I probably couldn't even do it. McLaren, Clement, Rowett, Walsall, McLaren again, Nigel Pearson, Lampard, Coke. Obviously, Lampard didn't get sacked, but a lot of managers have gone through Derby. And again, going through a big star. They'd had Lampard, who was a big star England player, obviously. And they go one better. England's all-time top scorer is going to be the manager. And look, we talked about that until we blew in the face. Don't want to have a debate about whether Wayne Rooney's going to be a good manager or a bad manager. We'll find out in the years to come. But that was the decision. McLaren in over the top of Rooney and Rosenia, and away they went. Koku, well, he came into the club at a time where there was a bit of a transition from, spending a lot of money on a lot of players. Youngsters needed to be promoted. He did that fairly well. I think for Koku, it was all very strategic and very planned, and at its worst, it was so slow and easy to stop. As in, right, we're going to go here, then we're going to go out to the wide, to the middle, and work our way through the pitch. And championship teams just kind of sat back, let them get on with it, took the ball off them and beat them. Was my general assertion of Koku in the end. Just didn't work out, did it? And on the pitch, horrendous. So look, all of those games are Philip Cocu. I believe Wayne Rooney's first game is Bristol City, possibly. I'm trying to remember which Cocu's last game was, but look, most of those games there are Cocu, and then Rooney and Rossini take over. I know the Middlesbrough game there is McLaren's first game, so perhaps Bristol City is one of those two games, either Barnsley or Bristol City, I suspect, is Rooney's first game. But look, it doesn't matter. Rooney took over in November, didn't he? After Cocu, with McLaren coming in 10 days later. And there's the table. Derby County, bottom, 8 points in 15 games, nearly 0.5 points per game. So just a horrible, horrible start. Defeats ahoy. Look at the only win as well. Away at Norwich, the champions. Ironically, Wayne Rooney scoring a last-minute free kick. I was lucky enough to be at the game in the press box, so I witnessed Derby's only win in that run. And he had a lot to do, did Wayne Rooney. But Rooney rally, that he did. And honestly, look at game 31. Derby, well, it looks safe as houses, don't they? My 10-year average, 45 to survive. They've got essentially 15 games to score about 8 points. And what did we say? I think the first 15 games was 8 points. So the only way they were going to find themselves in relegation problems is if they ended the season as badly as they started the season. And, well, let's talk about the good run anyway. And we were all, and me as guilty as anyone, enjoying Rooney at this point. And the defence was really good. I weren't conceding any goals. If you Google, you can find an article I wrote mid-season saying, look, Rooney's doing really well. Look at all these wins. Look at all these clean sheets. Great win against Swansea. I remember watching that and completely caught Swans by surprise when they were sort of up, pushing for that top two. And just a lot of the wins with clean sheets in. And in that period, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 wins and 2 draws. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 defeats. 9, 10, 11, 16. So 9 wins in 16 games with 2 draws as well. Just really, really good form. 29, is that right? 29 points in 16 games. Nearly, they got 32, nearly pushing their 2 points per game. Still some defeats in there. And look, yeah, home defeats to Rotherham and Preston. Double, in fact, from Rotherham. Lose to Derby. Everybody lost at Derby away, didn't they? Yes, I know. QPR won there, and who else won there? Cardiff, but there we go. So, look, Derby look very, very well positioned with about 15 games to go. But some issues are going to arise. First of all, down the bottom, Krystian Bielik, Derby County midfielder, suffers anterior cruciate ligament injury. Now, the points per game rising and falling doesn't exactly bob on end up coinciding with Krystian Bielik being injured. But it's damn close. It's very, very obvious that when Bielik is in the team, Derby were in the main winning and a very viable team. And when he's not in the team, everything fell off the cliff. It's not the single reason we're going to discuss. There's lots of reasons why Derby have come very, very close to being relegated this season. But I think Krystian Bielik's a brilliant player. A sort of hybrid defender, midfielder. Can do everything. Physical, strong, really good with his feet. And he'd come back into the team around that winning run. He only played 13 games. And he's just bossed it. I mean, follow your eye test. Watch the guy play. Superb player. And I feel so badly. 2 years running, he's had a cruciate ligament injury. Same as Bradley Dack. Such a shame. And a really big hindrance to Rooney to not have Bielik. And then we look again at the ins and the outs. Patrick Roberts hasn't really worked. Did score today. Mengi, a couple of good performances. One at Barnsley, I remember watching, thought he was decent. Edmondson, yeah, okay. He played well today as well, didn't he? Baningimi, Lee Gregory's been in and out, but still ended the season with Colin Kazim Richards up top on his own. So Rooney rolled the dice with a lot of loans there, and with sort of varying effectiveness. Morgan Whittaker is getting another youngster's going to be sold. He'll be back in one of the defeats, scoring for Swansea, won't he? Mike Taverick came and went during the season. Dwayne Holmes, 26, sort of championship level player for sure, went off to Huddersfield for a fee. George Evans off the mill, so still some squad shrink and some cost cutting as well. So yeah, it just hasn't been a positive time personnel wise for Derby at all this season. He's kind of had to make do a lot of the time, and the complete absence all season of a dedicated championship ready, decent age striker in that Derby squad is just, befuddling really, isn't it? And here is the horrible downward spiral that took us to final day here. And I mentioned for Derby to get in relegation trouble from where they were at, it was game 31, 15 to go, they would need to be utterly terrible like they were at the start of the season. And by God, they were. Look at those first 4 games, not a single goal in any of those. They get draw from 2-0 down against Brentford. Then they lose to Stoke. Again, shutout. There's the one victory against Luton, which is rare actually, because Luton punished teams away from home this season, didn't they? And then, going into this final day, 6 straight defeats to Reading, Norwich, Blackburn, Preston, Birmingham and Swansea. And in both of those last 2 down there, they took the lead and then ended up losing 2-1. Just a horribly fragile side with no goal scorer, with an inexperienced manager. Don't care how great a player he was, an inexperienced manager in need of some help. I know Steve McLaren was in there. And just this fragile temperament, not able to score any goals. And then when they did, still able to collapse. And even with this escape today, there was an ability to throw away a lead and then go behind really quickly. So there was your state of play. Derby, who had 37 points at game 31, at game 46, only had, it must have been 38, only had 1 point more on 43 points with the final game to play. And the takeover stuff is not going away whilst all of this is going on. 7th of April, it's now No Limits Sports Limited that are going to take over with Eric Alonso. So the Sheikh seemingly was going to take over in November and just rumble. Nothing happened. Waste of time, blah, blah, blah. Then this Eric Alonso character who'd been involved with Sheffield Wednesday as well, quite outspoken, quite young. He's now the guy. So just to paint that picture right through this season and through this run, just chaos off the pitch and takeovers happening, not happening, no stability, no security whatsoever. And here is the final day insanity. And you've probably watched it with me or wherever on the Super Stream today. Derby got what they needed to in a just ludicrous scenario where they needed Rotherham to not win, or they needed to win themselves, essentially, was the way forward. And Rotherham were winning for a lot of this. Sheffield Wednesday take the lead there, 1-0. Then Derby flip it back to 2-1, at which point they're safe. And then it goes completely the other way, bang, bang. And Wednesday are leading. So at 69, and we can go even further than that, 77 minutes, Derby are going down. And then the mad minute, in the space of that 1 minute, Cardiff score against Rotherham. Derby get a penalty, equalise. Everything flips on its head. And Derby are surviving. Wednesday are bottom. Rotherham move from 21st to 23rd. And Wickham, incredibly, 43 points. End in 22nd. Look at that. Wickham got 9 points in their last 4 games. I think Derby got 9 points in the last 16 games or something, haven't they? So Derby just get what they need to do done in this last game of the season and play out a crazy 3-3 draw with Sheffield Wednesday. And for all of the chaos and all of the mitigating factors that 9 times out of 10 lead to a relegation, Derby managed to just hang in there on the last day of the season. Here's my summary. Gradual change of approach. That's what I call Mel Morris reining things in at the club. And the league positions tell you, the spend tells you that the club has trended down now for a few seasons, hasn't it? 3 for sure if you count Lampard playoff final, Koku year 1, and this very, very near miss. It's a very steep trend from 6th to 10th to 21st, isn't it, for goodness sake? But the behind the scenes and the pulling back, going from, how did I word it, big signings to big loans to youth to really none of the above. What's the approach been this season? To try and fill the squad as best you can and cut the costs. That's no philosophy, is it? Owner wanting out and ongoing negotiations. Just the first two are linked together, aren't they? Morris has wanted out for ages, and the protracted nature of all of it with Sheikh Khaled and now Eric Alonso. It's still not done. They're still waiting for the EFL to ratify Eric Alonso. And just that chaos behind the scenes is just rubbish, you know, not having any sort of direction or leadership. I know Mel Morris has tried to give it, but, you know, it's almost like saying, well, I'm moving out, I'm off in a bit. You keep everything going, but I don't want to do this anymore. I want to get out. And it doesn't work, does it? Once you want to go, sell, get it done. But they haven't managed to do it, have they? Poor recruitment equals lack of goals. The recruitment's frankly been nonsensical, hasn't it? Particularly with the strikers where Chris Martin was allowed to go. Jack Marriott goes out on loan. Kazim Richards, Gregory. That's about it. And then lots of loan players coming in. Okay, Marshall and Byrne were good signings, but the fullbacks were sold at the start of the season. And we thought perhaps the team would be built around Louis Sibley and Morgan Whittaker, Max Bird, Jason Knight. Okay, Lee Buchanan, it has to a certain extent. But we end the season with just Jason Knight in the team. So hasn't been built around the youth and temporary feel with, you know, some of the loan business. And the big money was on Josh Viak. And, okay, he's been okay, but he's not, you know, regular in the team, putting numbers on the board. And the star player, really, Christian Bielik, gets hurt. So, yeah, just the recruitment leading to lack of goals. And then I've put there, key injury. We talk about injuries and injury crises and numbers of injuries. A discussion I've had with Norwich fans a lot this season where, you know, telling me, oh, Ben, we've got an injury crisis. And my response was, well, there's a big squad there and Buendia's still playing, Pookie's still playing, Aaron's is still playing. So put competent enough people around them, you'll probably still be okay. And then Norwich could survive 7-8 injuries at a time. I think they had around November. Whereas Derby, with their squad and their relative lack of quality in comparison, take that one player out, Bielik, and it has a much bigger influence than, say, 7 or 8 players that are not Buendia, Pookie or Aaron's in an order. You see what I'm saying? It's all relative with injuries, and that one injury has really not helped either Koku before or Wayne Rooney. Managerial instability and inexperience. Look, Rooney derangement syndrome is a thing. I hear people talk so much nonsense about Wayne Rooney because he's a big star. Do you know what I mean? He's a big name, and people just have very, very binary views on very, very famous people often, don't they? He's either the best thing in the world or the worst thing in the world. Obviously, extreme views are more often than not really worth listening to. So I'll try and be balanced about Wayne Rooney and say he's been thrown into an absolutely rubbish and chaotic situation in his first managerial job. He may turn out to be a good manager. We don't know. He's obviously very, very inexperienced because this is his first job. I don't think we need to go further than that. Those are the facts. He may well improve as a manager after this, but let's just say you could have put many more experienced managers in this situation, and it's still going to be chaos off the pitch. Maybe they'd recruit a bit better. Maybe their game management in-game and stuff would be better. But it's a factor for sure. The inexperience and, of course, changing mid-season as well. And then a late slide. Maybe that's where a more experienced manager, you know, God, I'm going to mention, so Mick McCarthy would have probably shut up shop, played very, very dour football and put the brakes on, drawn some games, and where they did have leads in games, his sort of in-game stuff would have probably helped, whereas Rooney, inexperienced. But let's not go Rooney derangement syndrome on this, and if we are commenting on Derby and the manager, let's be respectful and sensible and work with the facts rather than any unfavourable social comparisons and anger that we might feel towards a very, very successful, famous guy in Wayne Rooney. I put up my normal relegation theories. Owners relegate clubs, chaos relegate clubs, being too small relegate clubs, bad luck relegates clubs. So everything around Derby this season would have been a textbook study on a relegation team. All of it. Literally all of it. From the owner pulling stuff back, wanting to sell, chaos in the background. You had the FFP not guilty hanging over them towards the end of August. And then you have the negotiations that aren't happening. You have a managerial firing. You have a change and an inexperienced manager coming in. You have bad recruitment. It's an absolute textbook style in chaos. But they've not gone down. They've managed to just have enough to get away from it at the end. And the two obvious ones are owners relegate clubs and chaos relegate clubs. So they've dodged the bullet this season, Derby, on the last day of the season. If they can get their ducks in a row, get the ownership sorted out and move forward. Because that's the thing. It's just about moving forward, isn't it? Mel Morris does not want to move forward. He's done. He's finished with the club. He's had his go. He wants to pass it on to the next guy, which is going to be Eric Alonso if he passes the EFL owners and directors test or whatever it's called. So, being too small? No. Derby are a big club. Bad luck? No. So, a lot of my relegation theories apply to Derby this season, but they've just had enough to be able to get away. And maybe the three teams that finish below them, in terms of Rotherham and Wycombe, might be too small. And Sheffield Wednesday, well, that's where owners and chaos, they're the one, if it was going to be one of two. So Derby look on paper, when you add up all of the moving parts, they look like a bob-on, nailed-on relegation team with all of that chaos. But they just had enough on the pitch when it mattered, frankly, on the last day of the season to do it. I know, again, we're going to get comments. Oh, Ben, Wednesday got deducted 6 points. Yes, they did. That's nothing to do with Derby. So if your reasoning is Derby stayed up because Sheffield Wednesday got deducted 6 points, well, I've done a video on Sheffield Wednesday. We can talk about that. It was a 12-point deduction at the start, and we knew it was 6 points from a long way out. And I was chatting on YouTube with commenters. When we get to today, and it's the two teams on the pitch, the 6 point deduction's irrelevant. It's just head to head. Whoever wins the game, or in Derby's case, whoever doesn't lose the game, survives. So I'm not really as hung up on the, there were two FFP charges and Derby were found not guilty and Sheffield Wednesday were found guilty. One had a deduction and one didn't. Well, the one that's not guilty didn't get a deduction and the one that was guilty did get a deduction. So I'm not too hung up on that. And I think that's a very, very easy, very, very basic narrative if you do a dive, and I've done 29 minutes and 50 seconds or something on this, there are many, 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 many other moving parts that went into this. I've just written down there as well, what next? Sort the ownership out. Sort the recruitment out. Have a 3-5 year plan going forward with Wayne Rooney and try and become a viable championship team again under Eric Alonso. It's that straightforward, really, isn't it? So we'll see what happens in the summer. And the most important thing is Derby need an owner who's invested. And I'm not saying Mel Morris over time hasn't been invested, but they need a new one who's all in, and then they can move forward. Until such time as that happens, this chaos and the owners relegate clubs theory is really, really going to roll on and on and on. So I guess congratulations to Derby. They're more used to near misses up the other end than near misses down the bottom, but the near miss has worked in their favour this time. So I guess congratulations to Derby. I think we all admit, given all the chaos that's gone on this season there, a bullet dodged for sure, and they will hope, and Derby fans will hope, that they can move on from this and get stronger. Get your comments in on Derby and their survival. Look, I know it's raw today. 3 clubs have been relegated today. But on this channel and in these comments, we pride ourselves on a level of maturity and balance. And, let's try and keep it sensible. So if you would like to comment on the Derby manager, Wayne Rooney, please feel free. But come on, don't be a prick. We're trying to make social media better. And if you want to comment on FFP, please have your facts lined up. And if you can present an argument that's based around logic and things that have actually happened rather than raw emotion, which I know things are raw today for certain sets of fans, then feel free to comment. Obviously, freedom of speech, but if we want a credible debate, then it's a little bit better to think about logic and facts rather than the raw emotion of today. And perhaps maybe slightly misleading idea that, one team got -6 and the other team didn't. That to me is a bit of a red herring, I have to say. I think there's plenty of other stuff to talk about. And bear in mind, I've talked for nearly an hour about Derby and Sheffield Wednesday combined. I certainly found plenty of other stuff other than that. Right, thank you everybody for watching. The reviews are going great guns. I have my list. So season reviews are now done on Norwich, Watford, Brentford, Swansea, Bournemouth, Barnsley, Reading, Cardiff, QPR, Wycombe, Wednesday, Rotherham and Derby. I've got Middlesbrough prepped. And then we're just going to go down the rest of the table. So another 10 to go. So if you're waiting for your club to be done, it will get done, I promise. Although I've got a busy couple of weeks coming up with the playoffs for sure as well. But thank you everybody for watching. This video is about Derby and Derby survival. So get your comments in on that. And it's a big over and out from me. I really should rest my voice for a few hours, shouldn't I? Thank you for watching. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button to see more videos from this channel. Hit the subscribe button and to be notified every time we upload. Ring the bell for those notifications to come through on your device. If you really want to support the channel and me as a content creator, I will be eternally grateful if you head over to the merch store and grab something, or support over on Patreon, patreon.com/Benjamin Bloom. Thank you for your time. Go and watch another video.